My name's Sarah Brown. I'm the Career and Skills Consultant for the College of Social Sciences and Law. I'm going to be facilitating today's event with my colleague Michelle Cohen, who's the consultant for Arts and Humanities. We're really delighted that today we're joined by Yara, Alagha and Blix, who are going to share their career stories and their career journeys to date. They're going to tell you a little bit more about their current roles. They'll give you tips into recruitment processes, and they're going to reflect back on their time at UCD. So just to give you an overview and a sense of their kind of a little bit more about them, Yara is a parliamentary researcher for the House of the Oireachtas and is a board member for Women for Election. She graduated in 2019 with a BA in International Modern Languages from UCD. Then she went on to do a Master's in Public Affairs at TUD. Anna is a social impact analyst at Rethink Ireland. She did her undergraduate in politics and international relations and sociology, graduating in 2018. She also did a master's at Trinity College Dublin in race, ethnicity and conflict. So thank you for coming along and joining us today. We really appreciate it. It's really great to have you here. And we're really looking forward to hearing more about your careers and just kind of getting a real insight into what it is that you do. So I know that many of you joining today will have attended some of our previous events, but for those of you that haven't, the next kind of hour, I'll be asking questions, but there's going to be plenty of opportunities to write your own questions. So I'd really encourage you throughout the event to kind of ask any questions that you want to. If you're thinking something, probably there's somebody else in the audience that's also really keen to find that out as well. So make the most of the opportunity. We'll stop for questions at different points throughout the hour, and then we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end as well. Michelle is going to be managing the questions as they come in. So if you want to write those in the Q&A box, that would be great. And then we'll come to them throughout the conversation. So as I said, it's your event. I know that there's a lot of interest in this particular area. So please feel free to ask loads of questions. I'll also just mention as well, Michelle will be sharing a few links and things just kind of throughout the event, just to flag that we'll have an event coming up on the week commencing 29th of March. It's a social impact recruitment event where we'll have various different organisations coming and looking to talk to UCD students about summer opportunities and graduate roles as well. So that's probably going to be of interest to many of you that are here today. Without kind of any further ado, I'm going to ask you both if you could think back to your time at UCD, and I'd like you to both kind of have a think about what it is that prompted you to choose the subject and the programme that you ended up studying at undergrad. So I think maybe Anna, we'll go to you first of all. What is it that made you choose politics and international relations and sociology as your undergrad?
Sure. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I suppose the main thing that led me to want to study politics and sociology was really kind of an interest in social inequalities and in, you know, different things that I saw in society, things around me that I found to be very unfair. And I wanted to kind of know more about that and maybe, you know, going forward, how to challenge that. So I suppose even before starting university, I had this idea in my head that I'd want to eventually end up working with something that could create social impact. So that's really kind of the main thing. It was also a time where I'm you know, natively from Sweden, born and raised in Stockholm. So in the time when I was choosing to go over here and study, we were having, you know, the same kind of things happening as elsewhere in Europe with, you know, kind of far right extremism was starting to come up. We had a party, the Sweden Democrats, and in the election in 2014, they'd received, you know, they doubled their votes, their percentage in our parliament. So I think that's one of the things that kind of led me to really be interested in politics and to be interested in, what's causing these intolerances.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing about it as well is to say I was very indecisive. I've always been very indecisive, and I'm the kind of person who will spend hours trying to pick an ice cream flavor if there's too many flavors, and just maybe not end up getting any at all. So I think the reason I chose arts as well is that it's a great opportunity to, discover a lot of different things, study several different, topics and modules, and really kind of, explore your passion. And I was delighted to be able to do that.
Very good. So that must have been a big move, kind of coming over from Sweden to come and kind of embark on your undergraduate studies. Did you get involved in many kind of extracurricular activities or kind of clubs and societies to kind of help you settle in while you're at UCD?
Yeah, the first thing I should mention, in my first year in arts, I obviously had to choose a third subject, which art students will know. You have to do 3 or 4 in your first year, and then you can specialize. So my third subject was history, which I thought fitted in well with the politics. And I got involved with the UCD History Society, and even when I dropped history after my first year, I stayed involved with them, and I had a lot of good times and made a lot of friends. And I would say it's definitely been kind of key to my university experience to have that extracurricular activity as well, and to be involved with something outside your studies. And I felt actually it was quite helpful to do something that wasn't directly related to what I was studying at the time.
Very good, very good. And thinking about your degree, I know sometimes students that are studying kind of like social sciences or arts and humanities, because it's not a kind of direct route into something, aren't always, completely sure as to the particular skills that they're developing. So I wonder if you could share perhaps some of the skills that you feel that you developed in your undergrad program that have been useful in your career so far.
Sure. I think the biggest one, and for a long time I felt that this was more of a buzzword than an actual skill, but the biggest thing is analytical skills. It's really something that I use in my job, every day in lots of different ways. And as I said, for a lot of the time, people would say analytical skills are important, and I wasn't necessarily sure what they were and how I was using them. But I think politics, sociology, a lot of arts and humanities and social science subjects, you develop those skills. You learn to, examine huge amounts of information, bring out the important bits, condense it down, think about the implications of facts and applying them to different situations, and things like that. So those are definitely things that I would be doing in my day job a lot, and that I think that I developed through my education.
Very good, perfect. And one more question before I move over to Yara. So when you kind of started your undergrad, you said that you were really interested in kind of equality issues and kind of justice and these kind of things. You had quite a sense of wanting to embark on something that mattered, that had a real kind of purpose. Can you share with us perhaps what might have shaped your kind of career ideas whilst you were at UCD? So maybe any events that you attended, or maybe people that you met, or experiences that you had?
I think a lot of it was, learning about, Irish society inequalities that exist in Irish society that are perhaps quite different from Swedish society. That would have been a big thing to shape my understanding of what the major issues were here. I was involved for a little bit, very marginally, with Fáilte refugees as well, which was really kind of impactful for me to see the Irish perspective on the refugee crisis and things like that, which is obviously a very different experience from the Swedish experience. I think, sociology is very, very focused on those kind of social groups, group dynamics, social inequalities. So throughout my 3 years of studying sociology, I definitely got a very, I would say, developed that keen interest in kind of looking at different groups and different outcomes, inequalities that are intergenerational and that are, intersectional. And so I think it was mostly to do with what I studied more so than maybe any outside experiences at the time.
Very good. Perfect. Thanks so much. I think we'll go over to Yara now. We'll give you a break there.
Thanks.
So Yara, you studied languages, didn't you?
Yes.
Undergrad. So do you want to tell us what it is that prompted you to study languages at UCD?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I completed my BA in International Modern Languages, so I specialised in German and Spanish. I'd be lying if I said, you know, it's what I always wanted to do. And, you know, I had this burning desire to study languages. The truth is, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was totally clueless at, you know, 17, 18, whenever I was filling out my CAO. And to me, languages kind of just sounded like a safe option and career. And, you know, I always thought that potentially I could go into teaching or translation. Obviously that wasn't the case, but it just seemed like a broad enough discipline, I suppose, that could potentially mean different, you know, employment prospects or whatever. But it was during the course of my studies and my time in UCD that I kind of realized, you know, well, actually maybe politics is, you know, what I really wanted to go into. And you know, a lot of things kind of shaped that for me. I did my Erasmus in 2017. I went to Austria and studied German there. And then I came back in my fourth year and I ended up taking up an elective in my final semester at UC. Actually, it was called Political Activism in the Middle East. And it was really then I decided, you know, I wanted to pursue a career in politics. I was always interested in politics. You know, I'm Palestinian, you're kind of born into politics, you don't really have a choice. But it was when I took this elective and, you know, wrote essays and debated in class, you know, debated contemporary kind of issues and really engaged with politics through academia that I realized, okay, and thought this is what I wanted to do. So then I went on and completed a master's degree in public affairs and political communications, like you mentioned. And yeah, it kind of all began.
Just kind of grew from there, really.
Yeah.
Very good. And did you get involved in any kind of like volunteering or kind of extracurriculars when you realized that you had this kind of interest in politics, or did you more kind of focus on your modules and the kind of academic side of things?
Yeah, so I was actually involved in voluntary work while actually my whole kind of student experience, I suppose. When I was in Austria, I volunteered in different refugee kind of integration projects. In Ireland, I'm also a board member of Amal Association, which is a Muslim kind of female-led organization that works on improving, you know, conditions for migrant women. And also I would echo what Anna was saying about kind of student societies. I was quite active within the Islamic Society at the time in ISOC, and I actually found that kind of political in the sense that, you know, on one hand we were, you know, hosting these events and you know we were holding these social platforms and it was really nice, and then on the other hand, you know, we were dealing with serious issues because you know, essentially we were representing Muslims on campus, and so we were dealing with, you know, issues like students facing discriminations, discrimination students who have like housing issues and other issues. So we had to quickly learn to deal with that and to communicate and work alongside different kind of student services, like the student advisory centres, like the SU. And I think that really helped, and that kind of motivated me even more to get into politics. And yeah, I think that really helped as well.
Very good. And you mentioned that you got like a lot of really kind of valuable insights and experiences, and you were working closely with lots of different kind of professionals and agencies and things in those kind of roles. What kind of skills did you develop from kind of your societal involvement and your volunteering there?
Obviously just you know, working alongside bigger organizations, and also I think, like, you know, at one stage it kind of felt like, you know, at one stage, you know, we were this organization, we were representing, you know, certain interests, we were representing the interests of the Muslim community, and you know, we would have to lobby or work alongside the SU or the university even to try advance, you know, whatever rights or whatever interests we were representing. And so it kind of mirrors what I'm doing now, essentially, you know, representing certain interests, trying to advance certain causes, and working alongside the government, working alongside civil society organizations. And it was essentially the exact same thing, you know, I was doing on a smaller scale, I suppose, but still just as effective and still just as powerful, I suppose. So that's why I really can't overstate the importance of student activism, and getting involved with societies, getting involved, using whatever resources you have in UCD to advance or to, you know, just tackle any issues you have, or, you know, yeah. So that's definitely, you know, I think something that I
very good, really good advice, really, really important. And I know that straight after your undergrad, you went on and you did your master's. I think alongside, if I've got this right, stop me if I'm wrong, you did an internship, a parliamentary internship. So that was kind of your kind of first kind of, I suppose, role after graduating that you were doing alongside your master's. So I suppose it sounds like your societal involvement really did help you, you know, in terms of experience to actually secure that internship. So do you want to tell us a little bit about, you know, how you went about getting that first kind of internship that you had, and maybe just a little bit about that role?
Yeah, so the internship actually was part of my master's program. So it was offered, you know, through the master's program. So that's how I kind of got the internship. And I suppose the nature of the role, or what I was doing at the time, I was doing, again, research, but just for one senator, as opposed to now I work for 4 senators. And again, it was working on issues that mattered to me, I think, was what Senator Lynn Rowan at the time really kind of assigned me with. So I was doing, you know, research around minority rights, hate crime legislation, prison reform, so just social justice issues that I was really passionate about anyways, and it was just working around that, and yeah, so that's what I was doing at the time. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So you were kind of doing a lot of research, and what other kind of aspects did your role have? Were you kind of involved in other kinds of tasks, or can you give us a kind of a sense of kind of what you were doing, kind of?
Yeah, sorry, I should have been more specific there. So I at the time, and now as well, it's kind of what I'm doing now at the moment is kind of the same. I work for, so for those who don't know, all TDs and senators are members of at least one kind of Oireachtas committee, it's called Joint Oireachtas Committee, and each committee represents a certain policy area. So you have different committees on education, on health, on Brexit, on climate action, on even issues affecting the traveller community. And so there's some of the policy areas I'm involved in and that I would do research for. So it could mean, you know, like briefing to senators on relevant legislation around the policy areas. It could mean legislative scrutiny. It could mean, and so these committees, what they do is they engage and they invite witnesses and stakeholders to come in and speak to the members on different issues. So it could mean as well that I would have to identify and actually contact these stakeholders, invite them in. So yeah, that's what I would do. That's what I do now in a
Very
nutshell.
good. That was really good kind of explanation of how it works. A really good insight there. Thank you. I think what we'll go over to Anna maybe and hear about your first role, and then we'll break and see if there's any questions, because I can see there's a few questions coming in. So Anna, I know that after you did your undergrad, you got your first role as a social impact executive. So would you like to maybe tell us a little bit about that role and how you found that role as well?
Sure. So the organization that I work for now and the organization that I was hired with then as well is the same. It was called Social Innovation Fund at the time, and now we're called Rethink Ireland. So basically, just to give you the context, it's a funding organization, and we provide what's called venture philanthropy. So we invest in different social innovations. We provide cash grants and capacity building support. So not just giving them the cash award, but also giving them training, giving them, you know, consultancy support, and an accelerator program is what we call them, to kind of develop their organizational structure. And we do that through match funding with the government. So we would go out and, you know, get philanthropic funding from various corporates or foundations, and then the government through the dormant accounts would provide a match funding to that. And that's the kind of what we use to grant these organizations that we then select to fund. So my first role with the organization was, as you say, a social impact executive, and I went into that role straight after my undergrad. And it was an incredible learning experience. I should say it's a growing organization. So when I started back in 2018, I would have been, I think, the 11th employee. And it was we were in the 3rd year of operations then. So it was really a startup. It was really, kind of a small team of staff working on all kinds of different things. I got exposure to all areas of the operations of the, of the organization. I got to be involved with the selection process, deciding which nonprofits would get funding. I got to be part of delivering the program and so on and so forth. And I think it was an incredible learning experience for me at the time. I developed a lot. And then I decided that I would go on to do a master's degree and develop my research skills and my academic skills a little bit. And then I was lucky enough, just as I was finishing up my dissertation during COVID a couple of months ago, that they were looking for social impact analysts. So that is the role that I'm in. They were happy to have me back.
Very good. That sounds like it was the first kind of role. It's very kind of like broad ranging, like you said, because it is a kind of startup environment and a kind of high level of responsibility. So what were the kind of main challenges that you kind of faced when you were joining in that role? Because it sounds like it was quite a, like you said, a steep learning curve.
Yeah, I mean, I think the not-for-profit sector overall is a very fast-paced kind of environment. It's very varied. No 2 days are the same, which is, for myself, is really what I enjoy about this kind of work as well. And you get exposure to all kinds of different, issue areas and all kinds of different things that you find yourself to be passionate about. I think perhaps one of the more challenging things is to do with that as well, is that you're dealing with, a large variety of different kind of stakeholder perspectives. So you're not only, because we sit in between, our donors and then our awardees, as we call them, the projects or the organizations that we provide funding to. And those are obviously vastly different kind of needs that they have. We have to, be accountable to our donors, but also provide, quality support and be attentive to our awardees. And then, internally within the team to make sure that we're managing all kinds of relationships at the same time. Which can be challenging, but it's also very, very exciting, and you get exposure to all kinds of different people. Another thing that can be challenging, I suppose, is overall, for myself, the role that I'm in, I have a part in assessing performance of projects that are within our fund portfolios, and that can be really difficult. The sector is extremely under-resourced, especially with the context of COVID-19. It can be challenging to say whether or not someone is, deserving of funding, or whether or not someone is performing or not. So, it's the sadder part of the job. The great part of the job is to be able to give people support and funding. But sometimes, obviously, not everyone. We don't have enough to give everyone the money that we'd love to give them. That can be sad.
Yeah. Oh, but like you said, when you can give the funding, it must be very kind of fulfilling. And I suppose, like, my final question before we break for questions, because I can see loads flooding in. Lots of the people kind of listening right now are probably wondering how you initially found that first role as the exec when you first left university. So was that through an advert, or did you approach them directly, or what was your approach?
It was through an advert, and I wish I could remember exactly what platform it was on. It must have been something like jobs.ie or the Wheel. Even the Wheel is a great resource for things like that, and activelink.ie as well. But I can't remember actually where I found it. What I know is I actually had a sort of graduate position lined up with a different organization at the time, which was a much lower kind of pay, and it was more of a graduate position, whereas this was more of a salaried role kind of thing. And I had decided to chance my arm and decline the other opportunity. And in hindsight, I'm very grateful that I did. But it definitely was a scary thing to do, to kind of gamble on myself and hope that I would get this role that I'd come across, and I did.
Very good. And that's, I mean, you never know really who you're competing against. So it's definitely always worth trying. So very good. Right. I think we'll go over to Michelle now so we can take some questions.
Thanks, Sarah. And well done, Anna, on taking a punt on yourself. That's brave.
Yeah.
Inspiring to hear that from I'm sure for our audience. So I think you've maybe answered one or two questions in your last answer just about the roles. This is, I suppose, to both Yara and Anna, or Yara, if you want to maybe go first. Like, how did you go about considering like what masters to do? There seems to be considerable interest in the programs, and they're just Sean is wondering, how did you pick the master's program? And did either of you consider a master's in public policy, considering where you've ended up?
Yeah, so I was looking at different programs that were related to, you know, political communications, and I know there was another one offered in DCU, and really it was the internship program that sold it to me. I just thought, you know, getting firsthand experience within our political structures, you know, would just be amazing in terms of experience, in terms of, you know, connections and networking. And I know that's also something that I found really difficult, which is kind of social capital, I think, which not all of us have. And especially like, I know there's a lot of, you know, there's a big international community in UCD. And I suppose for me, sorry, this is a bit off topic. It's not really, but I think in terms of being a student in UCD and just really using your time there and capitalizing on connections, you really never know how, you know, a connection or, you know, knowing someone in a certain, you know, organization could help you in the future. So I think definitely that was something that I was really conscious of kind of in UCD. And yeah, so that's how I chose the program. It was really the internship that really sold it to me.
Okay.
If I'm being honest, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good advice. So people might look and see, is there an internship built into the master?
Yeah.
It could be something that might make their decision. Anna, what kind of influenced what attracted you to your course in Trinity?
Yeah, I suppose I would echo some of what Yara said there, just in terms of kind of being exposed to the university community and the faculty and things like that. So actually, you know, this might be frowned upon for me to say, but I wanted to kind of broaden my horizons a little bit. I really enjoyed my time in UCD, but I suppose I wanted to be exposed to a different, you know, academic setting. So I was kind of looking at other universities in Dublin, and that's really, I narrowed it down to, you know, DCU and TCD. And when I found the course that I ended up doing, I was sold by the, you know, the modules and the content really. And I thought that the idea that I had for my master's dissertation that I wanted to write would go really well with the course. So that's kind of how I narrowed it down. But there's so much out there, and there are so many other things that I could have done. And again, being indecisive in the end, I just had to pick one.
Sure. But kind of do your research is what you're saying.
Sure, yeah.
Absolutely. Very good. So Yara, question for you. Just after finishing your modern languages degree, someone is asking, like, did you find it, I suppose, initially difficult navigating that path, or just do you have any tips, I suppose, maybe for someone, this is possibly someone from a modern languages degree who's looking at career options?
I actually between the time I graduated from UCD and I started I started my full-time position in the Parliament, I actually worked as a German-speaking billing clerk in UPS, so the delivery service company. Yeah, so I was working in the billing complaints department, and I was dealing with customers from the Austrian and German and Swiss markets. So I did actually end up working for a bit with my German language.
So Yara, maybe if you'd like to, I think actually before we kind of broke there for a moment, we were talking about how you got your parliamentary internship, but yeah, so in terms of your current role, could you tell us a little bit about that? What does it kind of involve in a daily, or maybe what does your week look like? So if you could just kind of talk us through it, so we've got a flavour of what it's like.
Yeah, so I work as mentioned earlier, as a research assistant for the civil engagement group in the Shannon. So that's made up of 4 independent senators who also happen to be, you know, female and just amazing, you know, legislators who do a lot to advance the rights and, you know, conditions for vulnerable citizens. So we do work on a lot of social justice issues. I work for Eileen Flynn, who's, you know, obviously the first traveller to be elected or appointed to the Seanad, or any house for that matter. And so, yeah, we do a lot around minority issues. We, at the moment, we're working around hate crime legislation, introducing hate crime legislation. I mean, but the work is quite erratic, I would say. It just depends on what the agenda is that week. It's really fast paced. So, you know, like, for example, the pandemic meant a lot of legislative and committee work came to a standstill because we were focused on COVID legislation, and we were focusing on, you know, social protection, you know, the PUP payments, for example, you know, vaccine rollout, making sure, you know, the decisions, you know, there was equality and the public health, you know, decisions. And so the work really changes depending on what's going on. But I think, you know, that's the fun part of it, I suppose.
So you have to be very kind of adaptable and versatile and flow and responsive.
And you have to really know how to prioritize. You know, it's a lot of time management skills, like knowing, you know, what to prioritize, and because the workload can get a bit overwhelming and a lot. But yeah, so it just depends. But like I said, I do a lot of research for the committees that the senators work on. So that's kind of the gist of what I do, I suppose.
So it really sounds like at kind of any point, like 1 week could be completely different to another, because you've got like real
100%
and kind of like different points with your time. And would you say that kind of managing and like kind of minding yourself when you're really kind of super busy and trying to like get everything done and all the demands that are on you, would that be one of the biggest challenges of your role? Or what would you say like that you find kind of most challenging in terms of your work?
Yeah, I think I suppose from the like I mentioned, from a kind of logistical perspective, time management is definitely a big thing. Like, you know, like I said, I could be working on a research piece, and then, you know, suddenly something can happen. I don't know, like something, the government can introduce something on, say, drug, you know, policy or something, and that's something, say, Lynn Rowan, who I work for, is really passionate about, and so she'd want to stop all her work and make sure she's, you know, addressing and, you know, holding the government to account and making sure everything's so, you know, it's a matter of balancing all that and still getting the work done, still getting the committee work done, and because I do work for 3 other senators, so yeah, it's definitely juggling the workload, but also I kind of just learned to delegate, you know, the tasks, and there's no harm delegating, you know, work to other colleagues in order to make sure that, you know, all the work is done. So yeah, no, definitely time management and juggling the workload can sometimes be challenging, but it keeps me busy anyways.
And how does it compare with like what you expected before you started in your role?
To be honest, I actually didn't know what to expect. So the job that I have at the moment is actually a brand new job, which I was really lucky, I suppose. It was the first time it was advertised, and so there was really no expectation there. I kind of just, you know, I suppose I made, you know, I just kind of worked around what I was already doing, and I kind of, you know, so I there was no real big expectation. There was no you know, I kind of just worked off what I already knew, and I had a lot of help. And I think the really nice thing, I suppose, and something I learned from UC anyways, is always to kind of take a collaborative approach to my work ethic. So I always am working alongside people, I'm working alongside organizations, so I always have help there, and I always make sure to use that, because I definitely think it's hard to kind of carry on your own. Yeah,
definitely, that's some really, really good advice there. And I'm just thinking as well, also you're a member of the board, so how long have you been on that board? And tell us a little bit about like what that involves.
Yeah, so I'm on the board, I presume you're talking about Women for Election, maybe?
Yeah.
I'm on the board for
clarify there.
I was appointed as a board member in, I think, May 2020. And I was already actually working with a Mal Association at the time. I was a volunteer for a Mal Association, which is the organization, like I mentioned, that focused on minority women and, you know, advancing rights and improving conditions for migrant women. And so Women for Election had really strong links with Amal Association. They were really impressed with the work we did. And I was already kind of involved in projects within Amal Association, kind of increased my research as well, is kind of around my thesis for my master's program was around the Muslim community and their attitudes towards political engagement. So I was already kind of interested in, you know, minority groups in Ireland and their attitude towards politics, and, you know, why there's kind of low participation rates. And so that I focused on that for my research. And so they were obviously just, you know, they really wanted someone from a minority group, I suppose, and someone who has kind of in reach into these communities and try and increase participation, female participation in politics. Sorry, I should have mentioned Women for Election work on kind of increasing female participation in politics. That's kind of the essence of the organization. Yeah.
Very good. And did you mentioned there your research that you did for your masters? Did you find that from doing your research you built up kind of contacts and a kind of a network that you found has been useful in your current roles?
Yeah, definitely. You'll find it's kind of all interlinked. Like Rethink Ireland, for example, have funded Amal Association, you know, in the past, and, you know, I think I'd be strategic to kind of plug in, you know, Amal Association there in front of Rethink. Yeah, so I think you'll find the NGO sector especially is very interlinked, and there's, you know, there's links around in that sector. Also, funnily enough, like during my time in UCD, so when I did end up doing the research, I used a lot of my contacts from UCD to participate in my research, and, you know, I create focus groups, and a lot of them were contacts I had from UCD. So yeah.
So you really have leveraged your UCD experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Very good, perfect. I think maybe we'll move over to Anna to kind of find out a little bit more about what you're currently doing. So I know you'd kind of started to kind of tell us a little bit about, you know, your current role and the organisation itself, but maybe if you could let us know, you know, like what a kind of typical week looks like for you, and just give a kind of few more insights into your role. That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer is there's no typical week. As I say, every day is different, and it completely depends on where we're at in the process in terms of, you know, if we are selecting awardees for a new fund, or if we are, you know, delivering the capacity building program, or where we're at. But I would say the difference between the initial role that I had, I was kind of supporting on a lot of different things. I was working across multiple funds, whereas now as a social impact analyst and with an organization that's grown significantly since I left, I'm much more specialized. So, and I'm more hands-on, and kind of I have a lot more autonomy in my work. So I work on a fund called Innovate Together, which was opened as a strategic response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and we fund, you know, projects that are innovating and creating, you know, sustainable solutions for the new normal. And Amal would be one of them that is funded through this fund. So definitely a great project, Yara. And what I suppose my role is I have a portfolio of 14 projects that are funded through Innovate Together that I personally project manage. So I would be in kind of close touch with the people that work with those organizations that manage those programs, and I would be, you know, keeping in touch with them and seeing how they're doing, if there's anything I can do to support them, checking in with them on a quarterly basis to assess their, you know, their progress, and making sure that they're doing okay with the capacity building supports that we deliver to them. And then I also have, you know, other kind of responsibilities that I lead on. So one thing would be donor reporting. I've been writing a report for the last few weeks to some of our private donors that have, you know, contributed towards this fund. We also, you know, we provide updates and reports to the Department of Rural and Community Development, which is our main funder. So that would be something that I kind of work on from time to time, and also, you know, really depending on what the week, what we're doing at the time.
Very good, very good. And I'd be interested to know, you'd mentioned that when you first joined the team, I think you said that there were 11 people within the organisation. So maybe I'm interested, how many people you know, are within the organisation now?
I think we have reached 40, and we're heading towards 50 at the moment. So we've had, you know, we've doubled our growth in during the pandemic, I think we've had an awful lot of people being onboarded, myself included, you know, on a kind of virtual basis, which is really exciting. And it's great to see, you know, people come on board and new people, and the fact that we're able to, you know, grow and provide this very kind of well needed support during this time. A lot of people are struggling. Fundraising's obviously gone down. A lot of, you know, there's a big reliance in Ireland overall on the not-for-profit sector. And so we're delighted to be able to continue to support these great projects through the pandemic. So yeah, it's great to see that the organization is growing.
Very good. And I'm thinking like what anyone might be interested in who's kind of listening. What platforms would you would your organisation usually advertise if there are any kind of upcoming vacancies? Would it be like Link and those kind of platforms?
Yeah, I think we would advertise on Active Link. I should have checked in with my marketing team before doing this to make sure that I know. But LinkedIn would be a great place. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Rethink Ireland. We would post all of those things there. Also on our social media, our Facebook and Instagram, we would make sure to keep those things out there, and Twitter as well. So yeah, I think, but Active Link and The Wheel would be also great resources for things like that.
Perfect. I might go over to Michelle now because I can see that there's more questions coming in.
Yeah.
Time.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks to everyone for retyping their questions just when we got booted out there for a second. So very interestingly, Anna, there's a job advertised on Active Link now by Rethink, and somebody is just asking, like, would you have any tips for, you know, what would make an application stand out, I suppose, if someone was reviewing applications in Rethink?
I think, and I think this goes for the sector overall, but something that you really like to see for someone who's applying to work in the not-for-profit sector is just passion, and, you know, that you're interested in these issues, and that you've done, maybe like Yara was saying before, that you've done some voluntary work, or that you've done some, you know, you've been engaged with a not-for-profit before, volunteering, or you know, or with a university society, or any kind of, you know, activism base. So I think that would be something, if you have that, definitely put that forward. And then, as I say, you know, the skills that we do get from our education would be things like analytical skills, as well as kind of project management skills. That's a really important thing to my role. And you would have that from you know, working on your assignments, but also from, you know, being involved in university societies or volunteering or anything like that. That the idea of, you know, working towards deliverables, working towards a budget, or, you know, managing different kind of stakeholder expectations and things like that. But yeah, I think passion overall is really what's gonna stand to you, showing that you really want it. That will, you know, go a long way towards proving that you're right for the role.
Brilliant. Well, I hope that person makes a successful application. I hope you're...
Yeah, best of luck.
Nadine has a question for you, Yara. Could you please advise the name of the association that is working with migrant women? Also, are there also organizations who would benefit from Arabic speakers?
Yeah,
that might be a little bit put on the spot. So
actually, so it's called a Mal Association. I can actually type it in. And we're always running, you know, campaigns, and we always have initiatives, and we you know, we welcome volunteers, and we do have we have one position open. It's for an Arabic speaking social care worker. I don't know if, you know, that fits you know, if it suits you, but we do definitely benefit a lot from Arabic speaking volunteers. So, you know, definitely get in touch. Actually, if you don't mind, I'm just going to put in my email in case anyone has, you know, questions that they didn't get to ask as well. I'd be happy to ask. And then Nadine, if you want to email me, I could tell you more about the organization.
Very good. Yeah. Thanks, Yara. Donna has a question for both of you. Both of you mentioned your work involves research and analysis. Is that comparative politics analysis, for example, or more statistical analysis with numbers? I guess it's someone has mentioned both of you. Anna, do you want to take that?
Yeah, it wouldn't be so much with numbers for me. We've done an awful lot on impact data analysis and impact data collection. So I suppose there are some numbers involved with that, but it's not strictly kind of quantitative. It's really a mix of both quantitative and qualitative, and I was kind of leading on that in the past as social impact executive. But impact data is a really new field, and it's really exciting the way it develops, but it doesn't, follow, I suppose, strictly from the kind of quantitative methods that you would learn in a social science degree. It's more so, I suppose, the research that I would do is more so just, kind of desk research, looking into what's out there. Are there other innovations, across the world that we could be bringing to Ireland? What's being done elsewhere to, tackle COVID-19? Are there any learnings for us in our organization and things like that? So that would be the main kind of research that I do, rather than anything, anything SPSS based or anything like that.
Okay, brilliant. Sean, I hope you found that useful. Yara, are you the same?
Yeah, I mean, I solely kind of focus on qualitative data as well. And like Anna said, just desk-based research, just working specifically on certain projects that the senators are looking at. So we have so in the Oireachtas, there's actually a whole research office. So they would kind of focus on the more statistical research, statistical-based research. So I'd kind of just focus on, different, I suppose, on the ground social issues, and so that would kind of mean desk-based research.
Brilliant, perfect. And I think that we might have got interrupted just at the time that you were addressing that question about getting your internship. Yara, does that make, because someone has put up the question twice, just maybe just how you got that internship, and it was through your master's, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was actually part of my master's program. So when you're enrolled in this master's program, you're kind of guaranteed this internship.
Okay.
So yeah, that's how I got it.
Perfect. Okay. I hope that answers that question for that person. So any advice for applying to social impact jobs as an international student with work experience in the US? I'm a recent MA grad from the US and finding it hard, especially for jobs where you mightn't have that much experience. So I guess you've kind of alluded to a lot of the tips there around, networking and I suppose utilizing the UCD network. There'll be, I suppose, maybe adding to maybe some volunteer opportunities that might add out your skills. Is there anything else you'd add? You've probably covered a lot of the tips.
Yeah, I would say definitely make use of so what I did at one point as well is I would reach out to people on LinkedIn who are, who had worked in the Oireachtas, just for general tips and advice. And I think that's worth a try, just reaching out to people who are working in the sector you'd like to work in. I mean, it's worth a try. You have nothing to lose. Just email them and message them and see if there's any vacancies. And like Anna said, I would really capitalize on any kind of, interests and passion you have, and really just capitalize on that and work on it and become an expert in that, and then use that to advance your career in Ireland. I think a lot of jobs within the NGO sector kind of value that. So I think definitely use that as an advantage, especially if you come from a different background. I know in, my master's program, there was a lot of international students, and we really, we had great discussions, and it really made a difference, I think. So I think definitely reach out to people in the field that you want to work in and see what advice they have and see what opportunities there are. You never know what could come up, I suppose.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Yara.
To add to that, if I might, there's an awful lot of things going on in the sector in terms of events, campaign launches, research launches, conferences, and a lot of the time they are completely free and open for anyone to register to. So I would keep an eye out on LinkedIn, and if there's an organization, if there's a number of organizations or a field that you're interested in, go to those events and learn what's going on. Learn if they're having a research piece done and launching a new program, anything like that. It's always good to be in the know, and it could be an opening to finding out what kind of roles are going and what kind of skills would be necessary for those roles. So it's definitely always worth attending those events. I try to do it as much as I can as part of my role, but I would definitely recommend it to anyone who is a speculative job applicant, because it would be great insight.
Great, thank you both, Anna and Yara. They're really good tips. I think they might seem, easy tips, but maybe to an international student who's not familiar, they're really kind of useful things that they can do. So thank you both for that. Sarah, I'm conscious of time, so I'll hand back to you because we're coming up to 5 to 4. But thanks everyone for all your questions.
Thank you. I've just popped in the chat there as well. There's some an organisation called Board Match, which is quite good. They often look for university students to join boards as well. So it's not just for experienced people. So that might be something interesting as well that anyone wants to do there. So yeah, I suppose we've got 5 minutes left. So perhaps it would be interesting for you to kind of think back to when you were students and maybe share some advice that you might have, like kind of thinking back using like what you know today. I know you've given loads of advice, so this is just a kind of summary of advice, but any kind of tips for students that are listening right now that are really interested in kind of getting into the sector. So maybe Anna, what would be your kind of top piece of advice?
Yeah, I think it's really what I was kind of speaking to just there is really knowing the sector and knowing what's going on and making sure that you're, you know, involved in some way, volunteering for someone or, you know, being involved through university societies. There are a lot of not-for-profits that have kind of university counterparts like Enactus, for example, that you could be involved with. And those are really great ways to, you know, kind of make your CV stand out, even if you want to. As for myself, I didn't actually work very much part-time during my college or during my undergraduate because I wanted to focus on my studies, which I was, you know, fortunate enough to be able to do. So I was concerned that I didn't have enough on my CV when I started looking for work. But, you know, if you have some of those kind of extracurricular items, you can definitely capitalize on them.
Very good. And I think, and it's how you present it, isn't it? So it's thinking about your experiences. And I know when we were chatting before, Anna, you'd said that you'd been to one of Michelle's CV workshops when you were on campus. So I suppose I'd just encourage anyone listening, you know, to come and make the most of the UCD Careers Network. We have loads of different workshops, we have one-to-one kind of coaching sessions and obviously events like this. So, you know, we're more than happy to help. We want to get you kind of on the right track so that you're presenting yourself and your experience and skills as effectively as you can. And same question to you, Yara, have you got a kind of a final kind of nugget of advice that you'd like to share for getting into the sector?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo what Anna was saying in terms of being, you know, volunteering and being involved in student activities. You know, I remember applying for jobs at one point and, you know, in the civil society sector, and a lot of employers alluded to and asked about my time as a student, you know, what I did, what activities I was involved in, and to be able to speak to a certain event or campaign or, you know, whatever it may be that you personally contribute to or were part of would really help. I also want to add one more thing, which is something I wasn't personally prepared for. And I think it's kind of often kind of absent from these discussions is sometimes the inevitable, I suppose, phase for not all graduates, but some graduates, I suppose, is, you know, the rejection sometimes once you do start applying, and, you know, that and, you know, sometimes not even being provided an opportunity to have an interview. And I think, you know, I remember one time there was a job that I just really thought, you know, was perfect for me. You know, I ticked all the boxes and I applied 5 times and I kept getting rejection emails. And I think just definitely don't get bogged down by it. It's definitely a stage that a lot of people quietly go through. So it's certainly not all smooth sailing. And I think once you find the career and the field you want to go into, you're halfway there. And it's just about persistence and, you know, resilience and having thick skin. And hopefully you end up in the career that you know, that will contribute to, you know, social impact or social justice. And, you know, and I think actually one really good piece of advice that helped me, I suppose, in navigating what I wanted to do. I know at one point I was like really lost, didn't know where I wanted to go. And someone told me, you know, to identify someone, you know, who has achieved something you want to achieve, or, you know, someone you aspire to be, I suppose, professionally, and find out what that person has done to get themselves there and kind of use that as your blueprint. And that really helped me. And yeah,
really good advice. Yeah, and I think definitely you're right there. Figuring out what it is that you want to do, like, is kind of half the thing, and then you just need to kind of plow away. And like you said, it is just kind of keeping going. I know that there was a question there saying, can graduates use the UCD Careers Network? Yes, you can. You can use the you know, our services for up to 2 years after you graduate. So, you know, we're here to support you. Sometimes it does take a little bit of time. It can take a few applications, but, you know, if you persist and, you know, keep talking to people, keep getting advice and support, I think, you know, you'll get there. So yeah, I think we're bang on 4 o'clock. So perfect timing there. So I suppose just kind of, I'd like to thank you so much, both Anna and Yara, for your time, for your insights. And I think it was extremely interesting. So I think, you know, everyone's found it really useful. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
And the evaluation.